Hey, it's Drace and it's December's Imaginarium Theater. In this video, we'll cover all the enemy strategies, roster highlights, routing plans, and more using the Pyro, Cryo, and Anemo elements. When you look at this month's elements, one elemental reaction becomes immediately obvious: Melt. Melt is an amplifying reaction between Pyro and Cryo. In short, it's just one of the strongest there is in Genshin Impact. And when it comes to our roster selection, it's going to be a melt-off. Let's take a look at this month's roster cast. Within the Pyro and Cryo elements, it's no secret that it houses some of the strongest characters in the game. I present to you the 4 meta queens of this theater: Mavuika, Skirk, Escoffier, and Arlecchino. If you have all 4 of these characters, you are chilling with your feet up. If you got 3 of the 4, you are comfortable in this theater, and with this guide, you will full stella it. If you got only 2 of them, well, it's still possible, but you'll probably have to retry a lot and even resort to Vigor resetting. And if you only got 1 or less, good luck. I hope you're packing a C6 Yoimiya or Ganyu or something to compensate, because it will be a bit difficult. Now, besides these 4 queens, this theater has some interesting things going for the roster. For one, our child characters are pretty darn good considering their freebies. Chasca is highly flexible. She will clear a boss and an Arcana act for us. Meanwhile, Klee and Citlali can easily cover our early game while we procure units. Furthermore, we also get some off-elemented hexenzirkel characters, plus Mulani, in our special invitations. And of them, I have Mona and Fischl. Mona will be a key hydro unit so that Skirk doesn't suffer, and Fischl has some niche uses in this theater. On to the 4 stars. Everyone knows about Zhangling, Bennett, and the other supportive sub-DPS 4 stars, but there are 2 DPS 4 stars that I recommend you build, and they are Gaming and Freminet. Gaming is obvious. He's a Giga Chad 4-star plunger with good enough DPS. When he's backed by strong support, he can reach a decent power, enough to get a stella. Please build him up, use any great claymore that you have. I'm using the Valpass Serpent Spine. Please use the Crimson Witch artifact set for Melt and Vape synergy and level his skill level to 10. The second highlight pick is Freminet. Freminet is not a good character in this game, but if you're building characters for the theater, this is where he can really shine. His physical attacks with his claymore can trigger Shatter, and with Fischl being available, Freminet can also take advantage of the Superconduct reaction. With these really niche perks, Frem is actually going to assist in beating 2 acts for us, one of which is a tough boss. Moving on, of course, make sure to change your Traveler to the Pyro Traveler, or PMC. I hope you've been doing the Arcana quest because the C6 PMC is a legitimate Pyro character that's accessible to all of us. Not only is he a Scrolls holder, but he has surprisingly decent off-field Pyro app, a good character to back up our child Chasca. And by the time you're watching this guide, the 6.2 patch will be out in its entirety. If you're really struggling, it may be worth holding off the theater till later in the month, where you have time to boost up your hexenzirkel units, or maybe nab Durin, who's looking to be a pretty good Pyro character. And before we start our run, as always, some rules here. Exploit extra Vigor whenever you can. I won't be using any extras in this run, but absolutely abuse the hell out of it. It's really busted. I go over Vigor resetting in this video here. And finally, to cap off our roster, I can't stress this enough, but get a C6 R5 whale character. Hop on Reddit and you'll find one pretty easily. There's threads up right now. Choose any of the 4 meta queens that you don't have, especially Mavuika. She's really good. You know, I personally don't really like her that much, so I actually chose Risley, who's good enough. But if you don't have Mavuika, you should absolutely pick her. Let's begin our run. Here's the overview. While I was mapping out the route for this theater, I noticed that it had some rather restrictive character timing. You just want certain characters by certain acts. It's not impossible if you don't have the character, but it makes your life so much easier. For example, having Jean by Act 4's Defense Monolith means you're chillin'. It's not necessary, but your life again is easier. We'll go over the Act's character prerequisites as we go along. Okay, for Act 1, get any trash fodder Pyro characters, but not your super good ones. We just need some filler Pyros to activate Pyro Resonance. When you have 2 Pyros on your team, you get a huge 25% attack boost, so this is worth doing. For Act 1, we'll challenge the Thunder Wyop using Klee, Sucrose, Diona, and a Pyro Resonance fodder. This first act is very clutch because we can save a lot of Vigor using Klee in the given 4 stars. There's no need to use Chasca or Citlali yet. For the first act, I assume you didn't get much characters yet, so we'll place Sucrose in this team. Sucrose is only needed once in Act 4, so her other Vigor charge can be used here. Start the fight by immediately using Diona's Burst, Sucrose Burst, and then Klee's. The Wyop starts the fight with an energy-draining Ward Shield, but there's enough time to squeeze in these bursts before the Wyop shield is up. Do this right away before our bursts go to waste. From there, Klee manhandles the Wyop using this combo, N1C. 1 normal fireball into a charge attack laser beam. Klee is actually a very technical character and has a lot of different combos, but this is mechanically simple enough and can easily get a stella. Just watch her stamina. This team has enough damage to kill the wild before it employs another shield, even with 0 melt blessings. But if you're struggling to kill it in time, taking a melt blessing beforehand is fine. Do this and that should destroy the wild with a lot of time to spare. In Act 2, continue to get as many characters as you can. We want the PMC for Act 3 in Arcana 1. Likewise, keep an eye out for Escoffier who's needed for Act 5 in Arcana 1. Jean, Amber, and Lynette make Act 4 really comfy, so try to get them too. If you can't get anything, this is one of the rare times where I think taking a reaction blessing can be okay. Only take this if there's no characters or mystery caches, and don't get the other reactions, only the melt reaction. Act 2 is similar to Act 1 where it's the Citlali and Klee show. Your other 2 teammates are just fodder that you hopefully picked up, with at least one of them being Pyro simply to activate the resonance bonus with Klee. We're choosing the Nod Cry robots as our battle. It's very easy, and once again Klee and Citlali can obliterate them. While I know Citlali is a great character, we used her in the first 2 acts to buy time for more characters, and she is a trial character that we all have. She is absolutely welcomed if she gets more Vigor. A fantastic Vigor target if you manage to land it. Start the fight the exact same way as Act 1. Use Citlali's burst skill to get some cryo going, and Klee spams N1C to destroy all the enemies. It's important to move around and cut angles with Klee to make sure the enemy pairs are together to get laser beamed, which has a small AoE to it. The first pair goes down easy and then a second pair of enemies will spawn. Continue to N1C and this should be smooth sailing. Klee is a great trial character and I wonder what her buffs are like for the hexenzirkel homework stuff. For Act 3, we want to secure the PMC by now because Trial Chasca will be leading the fight against the primogems boss. The PMC has obvious support synergy with Natlan Scrolls and Pyro Resonance, a perfect teammate for Chasca. The Geo-Vishap boss has exactly one gimmick that you need to be aware of. It charges a big attack that needs to be blocked by a shield. It's not ambiguous by any means, the game will always notify you when it's beginning this super attack. If your shield survives the attack, it reflects a hefty portion of damage back onto the boss. Diona's shield is strong and long-lasting enough to do this, and if you follow this battle's rotation timing, Diona will always have her shield up to parry the attack. So we're using Trial Chasca, Trial Diona, PMC, and a Pyro Resonance fodder. Go through the skills team rotation, ignoring the Pyro fodder, and when you get to Chasca, you simply use her skill while strafing in any direction, making sure to avoid the Geo-Vishap's attacks. This will upkeep Diona's shield. The skill timings and damage should work out that whenever this boss tries to do the super move, you will always have Diona to provide a fresh shield just before. Chasca's power combined with the reflected shield damage will allow you to get the stella. Alright, we made it to Act 4, everyone's favorite defense monolith act. Here's what you need to make your life easier. Sucrose, Amber, Lynette, or Jean. We get Sucrose from our initial lineup, but hopefully you got more of the listed characters. All 4 of these characters aren't used for the remainder of the theater, so the more the merrier for the defense monolith act. I know Mona also has taunt, but she's way too valuable to be used here, so let's ignore her. Please pick this fight, the Treasure Hoarders. In addition to being tauntable, the Treasure Hoarders can also be continuously lifted and knocked down with Sucrose and Jean. You do this for the entire fight, and you just win. Just alternating between, Sucrose's skill, and then her burst, and then when you're done with that, you switch off to Jean and use her skill. That's all you gotta do. And then if you had Lynette or Amber, they use their respective taunts. If you don't have Jean, Lynette, or Amber here, then it's still doable, just annoying. You can use Rosaria, who can quickly build her burst and knock the Hoarders down with it. She also has fast-hitting normals to draw aggro, which is nice. Technically, all you need is Sucrose here, but it's a convenience thing. Alright, on to Act 5. It's here we really need Escoffier now. I hope you got her. Escoffier will enable your chosen 4-star DPS, Gaming or Freminet, to clear. But the battle you choose is dependent on what you've accumulated thus far in the run. The Inazuna Samurais are easier, straight up. While the permanent Hydro Aura and the weakness to Pyro on the water animals looks nice, it's surprisingly the harder fight of the two. So let's look at what you have. If you have Melt Blessings, at least 2 or more, you should use the Gaming Escoffier core against the Samurais. If you have Freminet, the Frem plus Escoffier works on both the Samurais and water animals, provided that you have Bennett and then either Fischl or a Xiangling. The water animal's Hydro Aura can be consistently frozen, which will then allow Freminet to shatter for extra damage. But furthermore, Fischl providing Electro App can also cause Superconduct, which lowers the physical res of the enemies by 40%, and a lot of Freminet's damage is physical, so he makes great use of this niche synergy. Still, if you don't have Fischl, Xiangling works here too. This team can beat the water guys all the same. So take your pick depending on what you've accumulated thus far, and whether or not your Gaming or your Freminet is stronger. The bottom line here though is that Escoffier is the one elevating these characters to clear. Having a escoffier also enables us to clear Arcana 1 as well. You can do Act 5 or Arcana in either order, depending on what your roster or blessing is at. Arcana 1's gimmick is a constant damaging of the on-field character by induced cryo damage. Chasca can get the job done with the Stella, but the inflicted damage is intense. I don't have many healers, but I do know that Bennett and Diona's healing is insufficient because of circle impact. This arena with the robots is large, and they spawn all across the map, so you need to be constantly moving around, which ruins Bennett and Diona's circle impact healing. For that reason, I like using Escoffier here. She provides the sub DPS for Chasca to Stella, while also ensuring that Chasca survives the gimmick's cryo damage. Chasca's mobility and long-range fire can cover the robot spawns, as well as the flying robots too. So to me, it's a clear team of Chasca, Escoffier, PMC, and 1 Pyro Resonance fodder. This match is fairly straightforward to play. The hard part was actually just figuring out the team. Skill bursts with PMC, skill with Escoffier, and then Chasca does her thing, hunting down the robots. All you have to do is keep an eye out for your health, making sure Escoffier bursts whenever it gets low. If you don't have PMC for this fight, your damage may be lacking, so take a few levels of the Melt Blessing and you can Stella. Act 6 is the Aeonblight Drake, the Flying Menace. You might remember him from Stygian Onslaught, but this version is much easier thankfully. There's a big weakness that can be exploited with bow users, but this is a boss and we are in the latter half of the theater now, so the DPS threshold is increasing. Exploiting the gimmick alone won't allow you to Stella, so you need some big DPS to boot. Either use one of the Meta Queens or your board C6R5. When the fight starts, squeak some damage in before the Aeon takes flight. While it's flying, swap to your bow character and snipe its wing orbs. This will knock it down and stun it briefly. The stun is brief, so you still need some good DPS here. But for even more additional help, you can get one more stun after this move right here. When you see the head orb exposed and glowing, you can snipe it for an additional stun. However, this is usually your last stun before the Aeon takes flight again, so I hope your DPS is high enough to kill it here because once it flies again, you're usually out of range for the Stella. Skirk or the borrowed Giga Risley can both get the job done, but I imagine mavuika can easily clear this too. Use a powerhouse here. You need the DPS even with the stun exploit. Act 7 is where you need to once again use a powerhouse Vigor. There are 2 fight options. One is the Fontanian Mecha and the other is the Natlan bot. Both fights have no significant elemental advantages, are HP sponges, and only possess a minor gimmick weakness, which is Usia for the Mecha and Night Soul for the Natlan bot. As such, you're simply picking the appropriate powerhouse that you have. I picked Risley here against the Mecha because he's got some Usia attacks, but really the weakness isn't exploitable, you're just going to town. However, there is a bonus team option for those who had a decent enough Freminet to clear Act 5. If you were able to use this Freminet team to beat the Samurais, then you have a Gaming Vigor freed up. We still need to save one for Act 9. And if you recall, we have not used our last trial Citlali Vigor, whose last usage was only in Act 2. Using Citlali's Night Soul combined with Gaming Melt, it's possible to Stella the Natlan bot. The timing and positioning is a bit tight though. You must defeat the cats all together utilizing Gaming's Plunge AoE. From there, the bot will solo spawn after and you should have just enough time to defeat it. I would still just use a powerhouse Vigor here, but this is worth doing if you really need to conserve Vigor for the latter acts. You are rewarded for building a good Freminet. Act 8 is our next boss, which is the solitary Suanni. Funnily enough, Act 8 is probably easier than Act 7, because Suanni does have a pretty large weakness that you can exploit. Essentially, Suanni will apply Hydro to itself. The game will notify you of this. You simply need to freeze them with some cryo, and then use a character capable of shattering, such as Freminet. This knocks the Suanni down and stuns it, and you can constantly reapply the same effect to stun it over and over again. Risley has shatter capable attacks, so he covers the cryo and shatter application, but I chose Skirk and Frem for this fight. You still need a really powerful DPS here. It's a boss fight with a lot of HP, even when stunning it over and over again. The Suanni has a lot of life. So as we approach the later acts, we're using more and more of our strongest characters. There's not many acts left after all. Act 9 is the bounty fight, and even though it's a later act, thankfully, Gaming can actually Stella this for us. So choose the Hydro Phantasms. They have a permanent Hydro Aura which Gaming can constantly vaporize off of. So using a team of Gaming, Bennett, Zhangling, and Fischl, we can beat this. It's not easy though. My Gaming is C0, so he barely skirts by. But it's worth retrying a couple of times to save on Vigor. This fight feels like a build test. Do you have enough ER so that everyone has their burst ready? Is your Gaming using Crimson Witch for the bonus damage on Vaporize? Please don't use Marichosi Hunter. If you have higher constellations for Gaming, I imagine this fight should be very manageable. But just know that at C0, you'll probably need to be very quick. Arcana 2 needs to be done before we clear the final acts. This fight is a troll fight. It's actually just a vigor check, and I'll tell you exactly why. First, these two enemies that we need to beat are the consecrated line. One's a scorpion with electro and the other is a dog with dendro. Their whole weakness gimmick is that they eventually produce a destructible block that you need to hit with this element to destroy. But this isn't a dendro or electro theater. No matter, we have Fischl to one-shot the electro block, and you can use 6 hits of any element to break the block anyways. This lets you get a stun and resistance reduction on the consecrated monster. So just break the block and all as well, right? No, like I said, this is a troll fight. None of this matters, because the block only spawns approximately 35 seconds into the fight for the first monster, and you have 70 seconds to kill both the scorpion and the dog. Therefore, if we want the stella, by just attacking it normally, the monster will be just about dead before it can even spawn the block. You can barely capitalize on this weakness before it just dies anyways. In addition, after looking up its moveset and other details, there appears to be no way to speed up or hasten the block spawn. It's apparently just move RNG. So if you know how to get the block out faster, let me know in the comments. Waiting and trying to play into the block weakness means you will lose a stella. That being said, there's one important concept that can help us to deal with these consecrated monsters. This is even relevant to Act 10, so listen up. Maybe this concept should have been explained sooner, but it's especially important now, and that is resistance shred, or res shred. What makes these consecrated monsters so hard is their ridiculously high res. It's hard to output the damage needed to get the stella, but by performing a res shred stack, we can bring those resistances down and actually deal some real damage. Some characters like escoffier have built-in res shred in their kits, but as it pertains to this theater, we're going to use 2 sources here and stack them. The first is VV Shred, or Viridescent Venerer. It's the artifact set that almost all Anemo characters use, as it allows you to res shred the swirled element by 40%, which is huge. Then we're going to stack that with our Melt Blessings res shred. At certain breakpoint levels, the Melt Blessing will apply res shred for Pyro and Cryo as shown here. This is why I only recommended the Melt Blessing so we can reach this level and get the res shred. The consecrated monsters have 40% elemental res because of their phagocytic form. VV will reduce that to 0, and further sources of res shred will stack, but at half their value once you reach below 0. So our Melt Blessing, which is normally 40%, is going to apply at half value since we're stacking off VV, which is already brought down to 0%, for a grand total of negative 20%. Of course, these res shred stacks are conditional, so we have to upkeep them throughout the fight, but it will give us the damage needed to stella. Again, this also applies to Act 10, so expect to see Lian Yan again, as she is a great VV holder. Final act is the green chubby dinosaur. Its weakness gimmick is very simple. Eventually the boss throws out these flame granite seeds. You just use pyro to hit the seeds to ignite them, which inflicts damage and stuns the boss. But obviously it's the final boss, so it requires more than just pyro, you need very high DPS. But throughout this entire run, we've been carefully conserving Vigor, so you should have a mavuika charge here. I'm using arlecchino because I don't have a mavuika, but it works out the same. If you have a Lian Yan saved up, I recommend her here. She's a TDDS holder and a VV shredder, and a shielder, so she's very helpful to give you that last little DPS push. Use all this and remember to hit the seeds with pyro and you'll win. We got all 12 stella, and I even ended up saving an arlecchino charge. Please use and exploit all the vigor in your run. Anyhow, for my tarot cards, I got the tower this time around. It's okay, I guess. I kind of want the moon in the other ones, though. Which one did you guys get? That's it for this month's Imaginarium Theater. If you like this video, like and subscribe, and we'll continue with many more future theaters. See you next time in the next Genshin video. Drace out.